Beautiful downtown Ladysmith, Virginia, an up-and-coming community. We've lived here since, well, 4 years now, and there's been about 16 new businesses that have started here in Ladysmith. So, go retail, go. Now we make a left turn at this intersection where you may see the historic Massaponax Baptist Church. There was a famous photograph taken here in 1864. Okay, I had a great hamburger at the Courthouse Cafe, and definitely recommended. And I am now going to go up that street to the Spotsylvania Battlefield. A place known as the Bloody Angle, or the Mule Shoe salient on the Spotsylvania Battlefield. 162 years ago today, May 12th, 1864, was fought some of the very worst and most savage fighting of the entire Civil War. In fact, possibly the most savage fighting ever seen in North America. By the standards of a terrible and bloody war, it was still pretty fierce. We're talking about men being piled upon men, bodies everywhere. The fight continued. It was extremely savage. But this is where it happened, 162 years ago today. The Bloody Angle is a small bend in the Confederate works within the much larger Mule Shoe salient, a huge outward bulge in the center of Robert E. Lee's 6-mile-long defensive line. For 22 hours on May 12th and May 13th, 1864, combat raged here. Confederate troops created the Mule Shoe on the night of May 8th, 1864, while attempting to weave together two lines of earthworks that ran at right angles to one another. Lee recognized that it was inherently weak, subject to converging fire from many directions. To bolster the line, he constructed stout trenches, fortifying them with upwards of 30 cannon. Even so, the salient remained his most vulnerable point, a fact bloodily demonstrated on May 12, 1864. It's beautiful countryside now and a quiet place, but it wasn't then. Like Lee, General Ulysses S. Grant recognized the Mule Shoe's weakness and made plans to exploit it. On May 12th, just after dawn, 20,000 men of General Winfield S. Hancock's 2nd Corps stormed across the field in front of you, from left to right, and swept over the Confederate works, capturing 3,000 men and 20 cannon. It was one of the most successful Union attacks of the Civil War. Capture of the Mule Shoe nearly cut the Army of Northern Virginia in two, threatening its very existence. Lee counterattacked in a desperate attempt to regain the lost ground, or at least to buy time to build a new line, close to 1,000 yards behind the outer line. For the rest of the day, both generals funneled every available man into the salient. Grant fought to win, Lee to survive. The result was the most violent sustained combat in American history. Fighting at the Mule Shoe salient focused on a slight turn in the Confederate earthworks to your right front, known as the Bloody Angle. The angle occupied a small knoll that commanded adjacent parts of the Confederate line. Whomever controlled the knoll controlled the salient. For 22 hours, Union and Confederate soldiers vied for possession of the angle, firing across the works or engaging one another in grim hand-to-hand combat. During the battle, Union soldiers took cover in the ravine in front of you. Time and again they rushed forward to attack the angle, only to be beaten back. With each repulse they left the ground between the ravine and the angle strewn with hundreds of wounded and dying men. Bodies piled up 3, 4, even 5 deep, forming what one man described as a perfect rampart of the dead. By day's end, up to 17,000 men were killed, wounded, or captured, most within sight of where you are now standing. New Jersey. The entrenchments still exist. Groundworks everywhere here. This is one of those compasses. Well, let's see. Here's one of my favorite places, the Brock Plank Crossroads, about 8 miles away. Let's see, where did we... And in this direction, Spotsylvania Courthouse, that's where I had lunch. Massaponax Church, 5.4 miles away. That's where we turned to come here. And finally, 9 miles away, the city of Fredericksburg, Virginia. For 22 hours, combat raged on the landscape in front of you. Although the fighting let's try that over again. For 22 hours, combat raged on the landscape in front of you. Although the fighting extended for half a mile, the battle focused on and became identified with a slight bend in the Confederate lines, known thereafter as the Bloody Angle. The fighting here consisted of sustained close-range rifle fire punctuated by Union attempts to storm the Confederate works. So heavy was the rifle fire that a 22-inch oak tree was felled by the impact of bullets alone. Bodies piled up in the rain-filled trenches, the living sometimes buried beneath the dead. After the battle, men were found torn by dozens of bullets. One man had 11 bullets through the soles of his feet alone. Another was so mutilated that his friends could identify him only by the unusual color of his beard. It was carnage on an unimaginable scale. And I have seen that oak stump on display at the Smithsonian Institution. And these modest mounds are all that remain of the Mule Shoe salient's once formidable earthworks. Begun by the Confederates on the night of May 8th, the works were 4 feet high with a 2-foot deep trench. Dirt from the trench was thrown against the outer face of the logs to create a bulletproof barrier. As an added measure of safety, the defenders left a small gap beneath the top log through which they could fire without exposing their heads.
Ride free, brother. Ride free.